Tonight we're featuring military people in the community who have served, and as you can see on the boards behind me, we have several people who have served in the military. It'll be nice for the community because most of the people in the community don't know that these people have ever been in the military and what they've done. They don't know anything about their background, so it's going to be pretty much a surprise. Yes, I'm a retired Master Chief in the Navy. I served 24 years and had a great time. I wouldn't have traded that time for anything in the world.
This is informal. This is our Black History Roundtable. And the reason we do this is we pick a subject every year that we think people need to know about. And this one's been weighing on me for a long time, that there's so many people in this community, as you can see, that have served in the armed forces, and how many people knew that before? What I want to do now is introduce everybody to you, and this is really informal. What we're going to do after I just say their names, we're going to go down and let them tell you what branch they were in, how long they were in, and some of the places they've been all over the world. I mean, this little old bitty Laurel.
Well, I was in the service for 3 years. I spent a year in the States and Fort Lewis, up near Seattle. I left there and I went to Germany, and I did 3 months. Well, I was in Germany for a year and a half. And then I went to demolition school in Austria for 3 weeks. And by that time, my 3 years of duty was up, and then I came back to the States. During that time, it was pretty easy duty, because my brother here, he was in Nam at the time, not at the same time, but he went there, so he had the hard duty. I had the easy.
I did a tour in Vietnam. I went to Australia, Hong Kong, on R&R. Okay, sorry, on R&R. Also, Hawaii. And after a tour of Vietnam, it was enough for me. I had enough, so I got out. I was discharged in 1970.
I left Laurel at the tender age of 18 in 1963. Walked down this dusty road, caught the Trailway bus, and went to Coral Gables, Florida. That was when my career started. After graduating from basic training, I went to quartermaster school in Fort Lee, Virginia. From there, I shipped out and went to a place called Tripoli, Libya. There I stayed for a little over 18 months and performing duty in Turkey at the same time. Came back to the United States, and then it was time for me to head to Vietnam.
We were suppliers, like I say, of most of all the material that started being delivered for the Vietnam crisis. And I enjoyed my stint. I met a lot of guys, met a lot of friends, but I got out, well, not got out, I got out in 65 and came back home.
Where I was on, at the time, the biggest aircraft carrier the United States had at the time. So from there, we went to Cuba, Spain, Italy, Germany, Greece, Tunisia, Egypt, Greece, Iran. I was part of the hostage crisis when the terrorists took the Americans and had them. We were part of that.
I think I'm about the only one that's currently serving here, so I joined back in 2004. And the places I've been has been Korea, Germany, Iraq, back to Germany, then back to the States for about 3 years. And currently I'm stationed over in Bahrain, and everybody knows what's going on over there. And it's right down the street from where I stay, so it's not that close, but it's right there in the same area. So I'm there where it's at.
I was in Vietnam from July 65 until September 66, during which time a lot of stuff happened to people that I went over with and people that I knew and to me. But I'm just glad to be here.
I was in the United States Army for 9 years, 3 months, and 3 days. I joined 2 months after my 17th birthday, and my motivation for it was I hear the young kids today talk about how bored they are and there's nothing to do, and it was the same thing back in those days too. Wound up going to Panama first, then Saudi Arabia kicked off. We went from Saudi Arabia, we Operation Provide Comfort, Desert Storm, Provide Hope, which was in Turkey. Then Somalia, I did a tour in Somalia.
I joined because right after high school there was really nothing to do, and the Navy said they would train you, send you to school, pay you. On top of that, it was a great opportunity, and I didn't think I would qualify. I took the test. I was too short, and I didn't weigh that much at that time. So I had to get a height and weight waiver. And I passed the test, and the jobs were open to everybody, even the jobs that the men would do. And that's the job I had, was aviation boatswain's mate, was to park, direct airplanes. My last tour was on the ship. I always wanted to go on a ship. But at that time, for women, it was very hard in the aviation field, especially. But I ended up going on the ship, and it was the best tour ever. I got to visit. I did overseas duty in Spain, Greece, Cuba. I did go, but going on a ship and really being on a ship.
The military teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you how to grow. You learn to know who you are and what you are. It gives you a certain direction. And more especially to the young men and young women today who is considering a career, I would highly encourage you to look at the military. If you're not going to go to school, the military can provide that for you. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. It's a rewarding experience. You get to meet a lot of people, your comrades in arms. You get to know who they are. You meet a lot of people from all different walks of life. And those people stay with you for the rest of your life. As a lot of my friends have. Some are gone and some are still here. And we bonded together, and we'll still stay in contact with each other every so often. And so I say, when you see a military man or a military woman, take time to salute that military man or that woman who has given all they can give.
I was a part of the kids won't remember, but the Cuban crisis, when we had the problem with Khrushchev and his boys. Happy occasion on that one. We were all sent down to Miami. Well, everything happened, and we were all sent down to Miami. Well, we got down to Miami, my squadron. They had run out of hotel rooms because all of the service people were down there. So they put us up in the Playboy Mansion down there, which was kind of interesting. But being the age, we couldn't drink, so it was just walking around. Anyway, we left there.
It was a good experience. You get to meet people from all over, different countries, different cultures, and you learn how to get along, because on the carrier there are 6,500 people on a carrier, which is a quarter-mile long. From the waterline to the flight deck is 9 stories. Flight deck is 4.5 acres. So kind of have to get along with people, because there's nowhere else to go when you're in the middle of the ocean. So,
I got to see Egypt. I love going there to see the pyramids. It was, you know, if you ever get a chance, I recommend that you see it. One of my greatest experiences is meeting, like all the other guys said, meeting different people and just the camaraderie that you have, and just it's something that you really can't explain. It's just something that it stays with you for a lifetime. I have friends now that I could call them up and we could talk for hours, just reminiscing on things that we had been through, things we've seen, things we've done.
Yeah, for the guys that went down to Vietnam, when you came back, was it hard to coming back into the United States, how you were treated?
Back, we landed in Seattle, Washington, and we had demonstrations in the airport and everything, so we had to sit on the plane 4 hours after getting back to the States before we can get off the plane. And we were treated real rough, but, you know, when it's like that, you had a job to do and, you know, you had to do it. And, but that was part of the way things were back then.
We left here as a group, we left here as a division, and we came back 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 at the time. Nobody knew that we were coming home. Nobody knew. Nobody greeted us at the airport or the train station or the bus station. When I came back, I came into Virginia. My mom, who had probably never been out of the state of Florida but once in her life, caught the bus and met me, and we came home together. But I don't do Vietnam. I was there, and I did my time, and I don't talk about it. It just gets to me.
He talked about it once. I was in high school. When he came home, we all, him and my mother and myself, we sat around and we talked for about 4, 5, 6 hours, and that was probably the last time we talked. One of the things that for these two guys and for some of the people who went to Vietnam that are like in our community, one thing they had was a family to come back to. Some people didn't have families to come back to, and it was hard if you didn't have a place to come back to, so.
Okay. When my son came home from the service, it was quite hard for him to talk about it, and it took him, I guess, 10 years before he would open up to us about what happened to him or what his experience was. Did you all find that the same? It's hard to talk about the service now?
but yeah, when I first came home, it was hard to talk about because it was right after the Iran hostage crisis and witnessing that and how that turned out, and which wasn't good for us. And you see a lot of things that go on during the day that, you know, in normal everyday life, it would shut down. But in the military, you have to keep going because there's times, first thing in the morning on flight deck, everybody that works on the flight deck, we start at one end and walk the other end to pick up little pieces of paper or whatever's on the deck so it doesn't get sucked into the jet engines because it has to be spotless. And then after you do that for about 20 minutes and we get ready to launch aircraft, and the first aircraft gets launched into the ocean at 120 miles an hour, and you see this big explosion, and you know the pilots are dead.
Let me tap here first.
You have to keep going because that's what you signed up to do, and that's your job.
Let me just add something here. As a military member, you have to be ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You become hardened as you grow in the military. You know what your job is, you know what's required of you. Some things are not pleasant, but you still have to do that job. The United States government count on you, your buddies count on you to do your job. And when there's a fallen comrade, you might have to do your job and your comrade's job. So life is not always peaches and cream, but it's a job. The 60s was tough. It was tough for a black man or a black woman to go into the military in the 60s. It was very, very tough. But life's experiences have taught all of us how to be resilient.
Yeah. Guys, thank you. I don't know if I can get through this, but my son in Iraq, his battle buddy, was a black man. Nathan, remember that? He saved my son's life several times, vice versa. And so some of you during the 60s had it tough. I know back in the World War II, my father talked about how tough it was for the black man. We've seen the videos about the black airmen and whatever. So thank you for paving that way. And I was angry too when the non-vets came back. But my son, when he came back to the airport in his uniform on leave, he was applauded. So there's been changes. People have been educated. And so just thank you.
I've been wanting to do this for about 2 years now. And off the top of my head, I knew we had 10 or 11 people that, you know, we could honor or that was here. We ended up with 36. There's all kinds of history in this community, and you need to know from where you came. Because some of us are taking a lot of stuff for granted. And the kids I look around, all they know is sidewalks and paved roads and this building. This building's only 16 years old. So the kids don't know anything else. It was here. You know, that's the way it was. We need to teach them. We need to let them know that all these people, you know, put their lives in danger. You know, I want us to just have some food and mill around, but I want you to do something for me. To these nice men up here who probably are going to kill me for what I'm about to say, give them a hug and tell them thank you. That's all I want you to do. Give them a hug and tell them thank you. Maybe you can shake their hand, but you know, that's what we're here for tonight. We're here to honor them.
Well, it taught you a lot of discipline, you know, because then it wasn't integrated when I joined. I think I joined a year after it was integrated. Mm-hmm. And then it taught me how to live with people, because before, you know, I've never lived with, you know, Caucasian guys, anything like that. But in there, they teach you discipline, and you don't care what color they are. I mean, you know, they teach you it's survival. You know, you don't care who's who. You know, you got to take care of each other. You got to love everybody. You know.
So did you feel like, even though it was the 60s when you entered, that the racial divides that kind of disappeared once you were in the military, or not so much?
It didn't necessarily. Let me say this: the 60s, racism was alive and well, and it did not disappear simply because we was in the military. it sort of went under the cover, if you will, but the snake would eventually raise its head again. There was discriminations in terms of rank, and so we had to tolerate those type of racism within the military. A lot of people would think that there was no racism in the military because of the United States government, but it was.
So when you came back, did you find it a lot different than when you left it? Or was it kind of the same?
Pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same, you know. What I found is it put every economic class together. Like when I was on the ship, and I'd hear guys talk about this was the first pair of shoes they had ever, and when they got to the service, and things I took for granted at home, they didn't have, and when I joined the service, it was because I was in college, and I decided I didn't want to go to college, so I wanted to see the world, and so I joined the Navy. But other people, that was their only, if they didn't go to the service, they weren't going to do anything else but the service. Like everyone said, if you really don't know what you want to do, the military is a good place to find out, because you can, everything you can do in the civilian world, you can do it in the military. And plus you get training and schooling.
So this guy and I played golf one Sunday afternoon, and some colonel saw him. And the next week, he got orders for Germany. I met him when I came home after I got out, and I asked him, I said, Joe, what did you do in Germany, man? He said, well, there were 12 of us in this company, and we made coffee for the higher-ups, and we did paperwork and played golf all day. Well, I had spent almost 2 years sleeping on the ground, eating cold food, getting rained on, getting shot at, got shot. I do have a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star from that little tenure, but like I said, I wouldn't change that time for nothing in the world. It probably made me a better man.
Why did you feel it was important for you to come and participate tonight?
Well, just to show our young people that there is opportunities to stay in school is very important, because that helps you choose the job and get the job you want, no matter what it is, from a little cook to aircraft director to a pilot. I mean, the opportunities are there. There have been so many stories, like the admiral went from a lowly seaman all the way to admiral. I mean, there's programs that way it can shoot you up with like a rocket. I mean, it can shine like a star.